So if it's not running, if it's not recording, it times out.
That has a date on it already?
No, it doesn't have a date on it. We'll tell the date. I'll tell the date right now. Okay.
You live?
Yep, we're going. You see us both okay? In the,
Yeah. That's good.
okay.
That's good.
Good morning. Oh, wait a minute. And you are?
Jack Moore.
Yeah, he's got to sign a disclosure statement there. No, just kidding.
You can't repeat what you did here.
You're not a terrorist, right?
Signing up for 5 more years.
Yeah, you're very listening.
Some people think I am.
Good morning. Today is 4 December, the year 2009. I'm Dr. Dave Thompson, a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum here in Palm Springs, California. Part of our mission is to record and preserve the history of our country's military conflicts. As part of the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participated in those conflicts. Today, I'm here at the museum along with fellow volunteers Dr. Jack Hurlin and Jack Moore, and special guest B. Sanchez. And today we have the honor and the privilege of interviewing Sergeant Ronnie Sanchez. Sergeant Sanchez was an infantryman in a Marine Rifle Company in Vietnam. So we're going to talk to him about that and a lot of other things. Ronnie, so good to have you here.
Thank you. Good morning.
Okay. Now, let me get you lined up here. Okay. Okay, first of all, Ronnie, would you spell and or would you pronounce and spell your full name for us, please?
My full name is Ronnie Eugene Sanchez, S-A-N-C-H-E-Z.
Okay. And when and where were you born?
I was born in Riverside, California, April 20th, 1946, at Riverside Community Hospital.
Oh, okay. And so that makes you how many years old now?
63.
Yeah, 63 years young. Wow. Okay. Doctor, what? He looks pretty good for 63. Huh?
He does.
Yeah. Wow. Wish we had all that hair, huh?
So I have my original teeth.
And all your teeth?
Yeah.
What more could you ask? And your father, what was his name?
I really don't know who my father was. I was kind of born. My mother was married at the time, but she had
okay.
had an affair on the side. Now I'm the result of it.
Well,
I was raised by my grandparents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would your stepfather, I assume, he didn't raise you then, or
No.
And your mother did not either.
No, I was raised by my grandfather and my grandmother.
Okay. Well, what was your grandfather's name then?
His name was Jesus or Jess Sanchez,
Okay.
and my grandmother's name was Jenny or Juanita, but her Americanized name was Jenny.
And what was her maiden name?
Her maiden name was Atencio, and she was born here in Palm Springs.
Potencio?
Atencio.
Atencio.
Right. If it was Potencio, I would be downtown.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, but no, she was in Atencio. She was born here in Palm Springs in 1895. She was part of, well, they were pioneers, really. You know.
Yeah. Huh.
So.
And where did they all come from? Mexico, I assume?
No. My her mother, my great grandmother, is Native American. She passed away several years ago, of course. And her father was from New Mexico. My great grandfather, John, or it was his name, John Atencio.
And he was
from New Mexico, and he was a settler there from New Mexico.
Well, was he Native American?
No, he was Spanish.
Oh, he was Spanish. Oh,
Right.
okay.
That's where the Atencio name came in.
I see. Yeah. Huh.
So it was actually Spanish, Native American. My grandfather migrated from Mexico. He was like a refugee from the Revolutionary War. He was a Villista. He fought on Pancho Villa's side. And when things went bad for the Villistas, he left because they were tracking him down and trying him.
What was his name?
His name was, that was Jesus Sanchez.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, okay. This is on your.
That's my,
the other
yeah,
side.
the other side,
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So
So-
he was fighting along with, or just
He
sympathized
was with the Villistas.
But he was
Ponce.
actually a soldier, more
Yeah.
so to speak.
Well, they were guerrilla fighters.
Right.
Yeah.
Did he talk anything about?
No, we found this out later from other family members and distant relatives. Yeah.
But you knew them. I mean, they were alive when you were a kid. I mean,
Yeah, my grandfather lived into I forgot what year he died, but it was what year he passed away. But it was probably about, I might have been 5 or 6 years old when he passed away. And my grandmother, she lived to be 85, and she passed away no, she was older than that. She was born in 1895, but she passed away in 1983, 84. So she lived quite a while.
She did,
Yeah.
And did they talk about anything, what it was like in Palm Springs? How was it when she left Palm Springs?
She was a child when she left Palm Springs, and then her father, he was like, they were like itinerant workers back then too, and they had a wagon and a mule or a horse, and they went to job, and they went to the Banning area, and from the Banning area they went to the Paris area. And my great-grandfather worked primarily in the brickyards that were around the areas at the time. Lake Elsinore area had a brickyard at Albert Hill. There was a brickyard there. The family went there. They lived in the hills. They lived out there in that area. They lived campfire type of thing, and boiling hot water. My grandmother told me all these stories. And he also worked in the city of Orange. Well, it was Olive at the time, city of Olive in Orange County, near the city of Orange. And there was a brickyard there also. And these are the stories my grandmother told me. She also told me that the family knew Willie Boy, who's the local legend here. The Native American Willie Boy. I don't know if everybody's familiar with that story or not.
Here in the desert? Or?
Here in the desert, yeah.
What? No,
Yeah,
I'm
the
not sure.
family was familiar with him, and he was considered, he was just a worker. He'd just go to farm and work, like everybody else was at the time. And he got involved with the law, and he hit the road, and there was a big shootout back then with the sheriff. It was like the last big posse here in this county, you know.
Well, we belong to the local Palm Springs Historical Society, so I'll go down and see. I'm sure they probably know something about it, or if not,
Yeah,
I'll
Willie
let
Boy,
them
story
know.
of Willie Boy.
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Willie Boy was here.
Do you have any photographs of your grandparents from back in those days?
Well, I have them at home. I
Well,
neglected to bring them, but
okay,
we
but-
have photographs, so yeah.
Well, I'd like to sometime, like if you bring your is it your father?
My father-in-law is going to
Yeah,
be here, yeah.
Yeah, bring him. If you bring those along, because I'd like to make copies and put in with your story too.
Sure, that'd be
All
great,
adds
yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
And it would be really interesting. And maybe if you have some from down in here, the Historical Society might be interested in.
There's a picture of my great-grandfather, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother. There's one. I don't know if we have pictures of my grandfather.
Yeah, well, whatever you have would be great. And as well as yourself when you were a child and when you were over in Vietnam and stuff like that too. Now, so where were you living when your grandparents, when you went to live with where were they living when you
We
went
were
to
living in Riverside on 13th Street, 13th and Howard, and it was next to the food machinery. So here was our house, and you could reach out the window and touch the wall of the food machinery. And that's the one where they built the World War II amphibious tanks and all military equipment. That's when they mobilized that factory. That factory there was primarily for building agricultural, at the time, food machinery. That was like egg sorters, chicken, it was agricultural.
a little
equipment.
a little noisy, was it?
Yeah, it was very noisy. They were still building there even during the Korean War, because I was a child during that, and I can remember them having all the supplies piled up in Lincoln Park on the baseball diamond, and they were guarded by Marines. The supply dump was guarded by Marines, and we lived across the street from the park, the baseball diamond, and I could still vividly remember hearing a Marine challenge somebody that walked on his post. Halt. Who goes there? Did it 3 times, and then he fired a rifle shot. And, you know, we were up and all excited. We stayed up all morning, you know, thinking we were going to see a dead body. But he just shot over somebody's head, you know, yeah, scare him off.
Was your family very religious? Did they go to church a lot?
No, not very religious. Only when we got to war. You know. Yeah, just like everybody else, I suppose. You know. Yeah. Now that family there, we have several. I mean, the whole family was involved in World War II. Some, I forgot which side of it was. World War I. I got to look up that one too.
Oh.
But there was some in World War I. But World War II was all the uncles, cousins, everybody was involved, heavily involved in that.
Any in the Marine Corps?
No, Marines in the family didn't start until the Korean War.
So you have a real military background in your family then.
Right. Marines in the family were kind of, it was a no-no, because prior to that, in the 30s, the Marines had been in Central America at the Banana Wars, and they were accused of being brutal. So when you joined the Marine Corps in the 50s and 60s, it wasn't a very good thing, especially in that neighborhood. It was all Hispanic, black and Hispanic neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And did you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I have brothers, but their last name is different than mine. And they always considered me kind of like, you know, you're my brother, but not totally.
You
know.
weren't really part of the family.
Yeah, I was more
so to speak.
Sanchez than I was part of their family.
And what was their
Their last name was Mendez.
Okay.
Right.
And did you see your mother very much after you?
I saw her. I didn't really see her. I saw her occasionally. I didn't live with her until after I had gotten out of the Marine Corps, and I only lived with her my total life. I probably spent maybe a year, 18, 16 months being under the same roof with her.
And how did you get along with her then, at that time?
I was pretty mature by then. I got along okay with her. You know, the older you get, the more you forgive. You know, so. Yeah.
And what was her first name?
Her name was Alpha. She was the first in the family. My grandmother had 12 children, and she was the first in the family.
Alpha.
Yeah, so she was Alpha.
The Beta, Gamma,
I think we all ought to do that.
Yeah, my grandmother and my grandfather, they were very literate persons. My grandmother could write. She could, you know, she could do anything. You know, she was very good. And my grandfather, in his own way, even though his English wasn't perfect, you know, he was very, very intelligent. You know.
And did you speak Spanish in the home, or both?
Yeah,
Or
we
English
spoke
or both?
we spoke that mixture of English, Spanish, you know. And when we went to school, the Spanish was kind of knocked out of you. You weren't allowed to speak, and if you did speak it, you were punished. And that was when corporal punishment was okay. Swats, ruler broken over your hand, you know, that type of thing.
And where did you go to grade school, grammar school?
I went up this street there on 13th Street. It'd be 13th and Victoria in Riverside. It was called Irving Elementary.
And what did your kids do for fun?
Baseball, throwing rocks, you know, that type of thing. Go down the railroad track, see if there's any boxcars open, and get on the boxcar. And then when they started moving the train, we'd jump off. You know, that was pretty thrilling, you know. That type of thing. You know, we climbed a lot of buildings, trees.
Were there gangs around in those days?
There was not really truly gangs, but that was a neighborhood where you all stayed together. So if you were there and you were part of that neighborhood and you were being picked on by somebody, then, you know, people would come out and they would help you. But it wasn't truly a gang per se as they have now, you know, these graffitiists or whatever you want to call them. You know,
Right.
we didn't have that, you know. And then one of my relatives took me when I was 10 years old. I was in the 4th grade. I was like uprooted out of Riverside. And one of my relatives took me to live in Sacramento. To this day, I haven't figured out why she did it. But she said my grandmother could no longer take care of me. You know, so I felt pretty guilty when I was a kid. You know, because I was kind of like shuttled here, shuttled there. Anyway, I went to Sacramento and I lived there until I was like 15 and a half.
How old were you when you went up there?
10. I was 10 years old.
And that was an aunt?
An
that
aunt
lived
and
there?
uncle that lived there, yeah.
And what was their names?
Tagalog. He was a Filipino. He was a World War II veteran, but he fought the Japanese as a Filipino those guerrilla fighters in the
Right.
Philippines. I forgot what they called them.
Like Filipino scouts.
They were like scouts, yeah.
Uh-huh.
And he was a World War II, but he worked at the Army Signal Depot in Sacramento. And we lived on a 10-acre farm that they had there. We had our own well. We had orchard. You know.
Did they have any children?
No, they had no children at the time that I was there. And then later on in their marriage, they had a daughter, Emily. And I used to take care of her when she was a baby, and she considers me her big brother to this day. You know.
Where does she live now?
She still lives in Sacramento, not far from the old farm.
And what does she do?
She's a housewife. She sold the farm, you know, bit by bit, and she finally sold it all. And she used that money to take care of her family. So she's married and has a family.
How did you like living on the farm?
I loved the farm. You know, it was great. A lot of hard work. I learned to work there. And I learned to get along better with people. You know, I learned to speak better. You know, I was out of the Riverside element there and growing up in there. And I met a big mixture of people, Filipino, you know. I met the poor white people. They were just as poor as we were, I found out, you know. And we all had the same values, you know. And that sort of thing.
How many acres?
It was a 10-acre
And with
farm.
growing crops, basically?
Yeah, we grew onions, squash, cucumbers, strawberries, and everything went to market. And my uncle, he also worked a full-time 40 hours at the Signal Depot. So in the summertime, when early spring, late spring, it was just constant work. There was probably only 2 months that you had off, really, that you didn't work. So my routine within was to go to school, get home as quickly as I could. You take a school bus, get there as quick as you could, change clothes, go to work, and then go in. You have supper and do your homework. Get up early in the morning. If you didn't finish your homework that night, you got up early in the morning. You got up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and you finished it again. I mean, you went back and finished it.
And what school did you go to?
That time, I left out the part about chopping wood for the wood-burning stove, but we did do that too. That was one of my responsibilities in the morning. I had to start the fire. At that time, I was going to Florida Elementary School. We lived, that farm was probably about 16, maybe 20 miles south of Sacramento. Right now, it's all developed, of course. You know.
And just all farmland around?
It was, yeah. There was creeks full of frogs and fish, and there was pheasants and rabbits and everything like that.
Did you go hunting and fishing and stuff?
Yeah, I learned to hunt and fish a lot. We had a lot of relatives there too, a lot of cousins that lived around there. And one of our adventures was we took a car. One of our cousins, Sonny, he was a Korean War veteran. Sonny collected old cars. I mean, they weren't old back then, but you know, he collected like the '49 Chevys and '50s. You know, well, we took one of those. He had several of them at my aunt's house. Not this aunt, but our other aunt, Lucy. We took one of those and we made one good car out of it, and we never told Sonny about it. You know? So we would use that to go camping. We'd load it up with sleeping bags and food, canned food, and take off to the hills.
What were the 2 cars that you used?
We used the old Chevys, and we just took another Chevy and we put it together. And we put a battery in it and made sure it had gas and oil, and took tires and stuff and swapped them around. We were just like 14, maybe 12. I was one of the younger ones. So.
Did you drive?
Yeah, tried to. Yeah, we chipped in and bought a Studebaker. We bought a '49 Studebaker, and we paid like $25 for it from these people. It was the bullet-shaped one. The trunk looked like the hood.
Yeah.
Had the split window in the front and the back. Yeah, we thought that was a cool car. That was our drive-in car. To go to the drive-in, $1 a carload.
Yeah. Do you remember the name of the drive-in?
No, but I remember we'd drink Thunderbird wine there. We were just we were kids, you know. We would drink wine.
They're really good.
Or we'd have
really
some beer.
stuff,
Yeah, good
huh?
stuff. Yeah, we'd have a hot beer, you know.
Do you remember the first gun that you hunted with?
Yeah, I had a Remington single-shot 22. So that was bolt action. You put a round in it. So you had to be accurate. you had to be accurate because you only got one shot,
Yeah.
whether it was a rabbit. And I was able to shoot pheasant on the fly
Were you?
with that rifle.
Wow.
Yeah, with a 22. With a 22 short round, you know.
Mm-hmm. That's really good.
Sometimes I'd just wing them, and other times I would actually, you know, drop them. That was snap shooting, we used to call it. And then we had a 410. That was a full choke 410. That was a H&R, Harrison and Richards 410. And that was single shot also. Then my other cousins, they had their father, our Uncle Ernest, my cousin Johnny's dad, he had a collection of rifles because he was a true Native American. You know, he was part Anglo. The last name was Jameson, but he was part of the Miwok tribe up in the foothills of Sacramento, and they had a full collection of rifles and handguns. So he would let us use those. If we went camping with him, we were allowed to carry that. The lever action 30-30. The saddle carbine, we carried that, or we carried a 300 Savage, which had a mean kick to it. That was quite a rifle to fire. So that was that was my introduction and Johnny's introduction to firearms. You know, so
I meant to ask you, your grandmother, what tribe was she in?
my great grandmother.
Your great grandmother, I mean, yeah.
We don't really know, but they just say Mission Indian. That's all. That's all we say. We have a lot of the birth certificates at home too of them, and baptismal certificates. But I don't know if I want to bring those over to have them publicized because I don't know all the true history of that. You know.
Yeah.
So.
So then you say you stayed there till you were 15?
15 and a half.
And
yeah.
then what?
I ran away. I got into it with my aunt. She was very. She was pretty tough character to be around. So I ran away and I came back to Riverside, and I worked and I went to school, went back to Poly High School, and
So
I
you
quit.
went to Riverside Poly. Then.
Yeah, and I quit in my senior year.
Now, is that where were you? Who were you living with then?
Well, I lived for a time with my mom and my stepfather, but then I didn't fit in there, so I went back to live with my grandmother, and then it was back to being. I was sleeping on the sofa in the living room, So when the time came, I was 17. I was old enough to enlist in the Marine Corps with signature. So I asked my mom for permission, and she gave me verbal permission. I went and took the test, and then she came down later. She got a ride with one of our older brothers, and she went and signed me over to the Marine Corps. Not signed me over, but
Right.
she signed the documents to get me in there. 17.
Okay, but during that year and a half or so, you went to Riverside Poly. Did you say did you have a job then too? Were you working?
Well, I worked all the time, but mainly I worked with the Ayala brothers. There was Ronnie Ayala. He was a good friend of ours, and they had a tow truck business. And Ronnie was older, and Ronnie was a big man. He was a big boy back then, a big husky young man. And he would get me because I could crawl underneath the car to get a starter out. I knew what a starter was. I could take the starter out. I could reach in there and get a carburetor, and he would pay me, $15 for a couple hours of work, $10, whatever he had. And I somehow or another ended up with a job out in the desert, and it was north of Las Vegas, and it was at an Army base. Well, being clever, being a smart aleck kid, I went and borrowed somebody else's Social Security card, and to say I was over 20 to get on that job. And we salvaged cable out of there, out of the Army base. And this was big pieces of cable, and it was blistering hot. And all that money I earned quite a bit of money back then. I just took it and brought it home, gave it to Grandma. So.
When you were in high school at Poly, did you play any sports at all?
I tried out for the football team and I got injured, and then because I didn't, and that was you tried out, and if you made the team, then you bought the insurance. Well, the insurance at the time was $25, and I didn't have the $25, but I was already injured, and I said, you know what, I'm not going to do this again. So I didn't play sports there. I played sports when I was in Sacramento. Played baseball and football there.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
What positions did you play?
Well, in football, I was more like I guess you'd call me more like a linebacker, defense. I was pretty good at defense. And in baseball, I was third base and left field.
That was like a junior high. Or did you go to
That
high
was
school?
that was
there?
junior high, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Did you have any favorite sports teams?
The Giants. Yeah.
And who were McCovey and Mays? Were they playing there that time?
I think Willie Mays was playing, back then, yeah.
Did you ever get to go to a game?
No, we went at that school there at Florida Elementary. They took us to Berkeley to see the Bears one time. That was it. Yeah, it was the coach there. He took us.
Did you listen to the games on the radio, the Giants then, or?
Yeah, we had the radio, and then we had a neighbor there that had a television, which was pretty big deal back then. It was black and white, fuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd go over there and watch either hockey or the baseball game there. Yeah.
I think was it Russ Hodges was the announcer there for the Giants back then. I think I'm not sure.
Yeah, and then in Sacramento area it was Stu Naham. He was.
Oh yeah.
Remember Stu Naham?
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, he came down. He was in L.A. for quite a long
Right,
time too.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he had a cartoon show up there also. So he was called Skipper Stu.
Okay.
He did. Yeah, he was the host on the cartoon show. And he would dress up like a riverboat captain, and then he would show us Popeye cartoons.
Huh.
See the things you remember?
Yeah, really.
Skipper Stu.
Things we learned. I'm glad I learned that. I hate to go through life not.
Yeah, you wouldn't have known that.
Did you get in trouble? Let me put it this way: did you go in the Marine Corps just to get away from the family, or from the environment that you were living in, or any trouble on the horizon, or
There could have been
before the horizon?
There could have been a lot of trouble on the horizon, but I mainly went in for this was the joke in the Marine Corps. You join for 3 hots and a flop, so it's 3 hot meals and a bed. That was it, and that was our joke. That was our story. We stuck by it. We had 3 hots and a flop, and everybody laughed. Was it worth it? Yeah. Yeah, we got paid $3 a day too. See, because you got $90 a month. So you average that was $3 a day. It was big bucks back then. Yeah, but you got to eat.
Yeah. And so, where did you go for basic then?
Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego. September '63.
What year did you enlist?
September. Well, let's talk military. 29 September '63, 1963. Yeah.
And tell me what that was like.
Well, I'd already had a pretty good idea what it was going to be like, but it was still tremendous. I mean, it was a shock. The first day that we were there, they kept us up all day and all night. You stayed awake. So by the time you stumbled out of the receiving barracks, you're pretty much already sleep deprived.
Were you in pretty good shape physically in those days?
I was a scrawny kid. I was very scrawny. I think when I went in to boot camp, I might have weighed 145 pounds. When I left MCRD, I weighed 160. So I put on 15 pounds, and it was pretty solid. So I was a scrawny little kid,
Did you know anybody else that went in with at the same time you did?
Well, in our little group in that neighborhood, I was among the first to enlist. And then the fellow up the street, Richard Romero, he enlisted after I did. And then Michael Lozano enlisted. And then it was like a flood of guys that went in. But a lot of them waited till after they graduated or a year after. Because the job prospects back then were not good at all in the 60s. Especially the early 60s. It was part of that recession that was sweeping the 50s when everybody was unemployed. Yeah, that was the same thing.
Did you have any special girlfriends then?
Not really. I liked them all. Really, there was nobody special. I would tell them they were special, sure. I love you, baby. That type of thing. That never changes.
Tell me about the DIs, drill instructors.
They were all Korean War veterans. And we had Staff Sergeant Jones, very calm, very deliberate, individual. We had Staff Sergeant Markland. He was kind of a funny man, but he got the point across. And of course, he was deliberate also. And then we had Sergeant Shields. He was an E5, and he was kind of a really kind of the mean person, of the group. But I think they all had their roles assigned to them, and they played that role,
Good cop, bad cop.
Good cop, bad cop, yeah, that type of thing. The experiences we had there, if somebody failed to do something correctly, then we all suffered, not just that individual. And they still do that to this day. They'll take that individual aside, put him over here, and we took the punishment. And today they're still practicing that same thing. That way, you learn to work as a team. You're no longer the individual. You're a Marine. You're part of a team.
Did you see that movie, The DI, with Jack Webb?
Well, we saw that one, and the one that struck me a lot, or really got to me when I was a kid, it was being shown again in the 50s. It was with Gung Ho.
Oh, yeah.
Alan Ladd. Yeah, that was filmed at MCR, Marine Corps Recruit Depot also. And that we found out, at the end of the movie, the credits, it said that Gung Ho means Chinese for all the way. So that stuck with me, and then they showed the big Marine emblem, and they played the Marine Corps hymn, that type of thing. Yeah, you're going to be a Marine. You're a Marine.
Yeah. What was the washout rate in your group?
In our group, there was no injuries in our platoon, but a few of the guys one man, he was trying to escape his marriage in Los Angeles, so he had a false enlistment, and I forgot his name. He was a young guy too, but he was married, and he was only like 18, and he had a couple of kids already back then, and he couldn't get a job. He wasn't supporting anybody, and his wife tracked him down. Anyway, it turned out that he had done this before. He had tried the Navy, the Army, and every time he would get out of town, she would find him. So they hauled him out and they chewed him out. I forgot which one of the DIs got a hold of him. You're out of here. We found out later that it was a false enlistment. A few of the guys had to go. We used to call it the fat farm. They were overweight, grossly overweight, and they couldn't keep up. But they showed the desire. They wanted to be there. So they would send them to what was called the fat farm. And that sent them back 2 weeks till they lost the weight and they could perform everything. So long as you showed the desire, and we had guys that were injured that carried through,
Or were there many that just couldn't cut it? They just didn't like it?
No, I think we were part of a group or a generation that we were tough people. I still believe that to this day.
Many Mexican Americans in that in your outfit?
In boot camp, there was some, not a lot.
And was there? And I don't think that I doubt there was, but I'll ask just so we know. There probably weren't cliques where certain races hung together so much. They
No.
tried to, because you had to be a team.
No, I didn't see that till later on in the Marine Corps. I actually did see it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Well, what did you see?
Well, when we came back from Vietnam, we were sent to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina,
Yeah.
and they segregated themselves. The black Marines segregated themselves from the white Marines, and even in some of the cities you went to in North Carolina, there was still segregation. There was the white.
Oh, okay.
There was the white water fountain and the black
So
water
they
fountain.
didn't. Okay, I guess
It wasn't
It wasn't that the blacks wanted to be
No.
together as they had to.
It was the race.
because
It
of
was the time.
Really?
The culture at the time. At Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
My goodness.
Yeah. As soon as
Well,
you
I
crossed the line, or as soon as you went into Virginia from Washington, D.C., it was a different world.
Huh.
And of course, I challenged it. I would be there, and I would go to the white water fountain. I'd drink out of it. Why not? We fought for that, right? That's what I told everybody too.
Well, did that apply to Mexican Americans?
It
too?
applied to anybody that wasn't white.
Hmm.
That was in 1966 when we came back.
Hmm.
So,
Well, okay, back to, okay, so you get out of boot camp, then where do you go? MCRD, get out of
you know, went to MCRD, and then I went to Camp Pendleton for infantry training, and then from there went to division.
Your infantry training was at, with the rifle, learn to shoot the rifle and stuff
infantry.
like
Yes.
And did it come pretty
How to-
easy to you
how to
since
dig
you
a
had been
foxhole
since you had
and-
been hunting and stuff before?
I think, yeah, that's what, most of us were farm boys, or we'd been around guns, you know, and there was a few guys, there was a few city, but I'd say the majority of us were kind of country, you know, so it didn't bother us that much, you know, sleeping out in the open, that type of thing, you know.
And what was the weapon that you were using, training on?
Well, at that time, they were making this big transfer over from the M1 to the M14 in the early '60s. So, but when we were there at infantry recruit training, which was part of our boot camp, we had to learn how to fire the .30 caliber machine gun, the Browning automatic rifle, the M1, that type of thing. And we asked them why, and they says, "Well, your rifle is going to be the M14 because that's what we train with and to qualify with. But you may go to a country where they're still using these, and which is true. In Vietnam, they're still using the Thompson submachine gun, even, you know. And we had the .45 caliber 1911 Colt pistol. We had that. That was our sidearm. So you had to be proficient in each one of those. And that means tearing them down, fixing them, you know, cleaning them, loading them, everything.
And so how long were you there then at Pendleton?
Well, let's see. Might have been there over a year. I forgot how many months it was total.
And that which
We
would
went
put,
to,
would put it up to like what year?
It was over a year. Let's see, I left there in '65.
65.
I left there in March of '65. I went to division in 1964.
That's the 5th Marine Division, did you say?
No, 5th Marine Regiment,
Regiment.
1st Marine Division at Camp Margarita. And I went to 2-5, well, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment. And there, that's where you became a true Marine, because you were in a rifle company. And you saw the barracks, you probably saw the barracks maybe 4 days out of the month, and the rest of the time you're out in the field. In the field in the Marine Rifle Company is you're living out there, and you're constantly moving. And every day is a battle. They've got aggressors, they would call them, that they would attack you with blank ammunition, and you had to fend them off. So every day you're training and training and training for this big mission that you're going to go on. And that's where you saw, like I'm saying, you saw the barracks maybe. You might have been in that barracks if you were lucky for a full week of a month. And most of the time you're out in the boonies.
And where was the Camp Margarita?
Camp Margarita was next to Main Side at Camp Pendleton. You take the main gate up to, just before you got to Main Side, you took the side road up there.
Now, Vietnam was just getting underway. Were you aware of what was going on over there and the likelihood that you're going to end up there?
Right, we were aware of that. The NCOs that trained us at Camp Margarita, the corporals and above, they had been deployed, you know, to the FMF, Fleet Marine Force, and they had been over there. They had been all through the Pacific, all these islands, you know, they did their operations and everything. Well, gradually the stories came out that these guys were they had made raids in South Vietnam. They had done river patrols. These are the NCOs that trained us. And gradually the stories came out that so-and-so had done this and so-and-so had done that, you know. And that's how we heard about it. Plus, we were pretty well read, you know. People think of Marines, and especially infantry guys, as being grunts. That's what they call us. Gravel crunchers, grunts. crunchies, you know, that type of thing. Thought of us as being kind of ignorant, you know, but we were pretty well read. Read all the newspapers, Time magazine was passed around, you know, that type of thing. So we were aware of everything that was going on. At that time, it was Laos. At the Plain de Jars in Laos was a big battle. The Laotians had just, you know, the Pathet Lao back then had wiped out the Laotian army, and they had control. The communists had control of that area. The other big thing was Europe. We thought we were going to go to Europe. And we got to remember, before I went in the Marine Corps, we had the Cuban Missile Crisis, and we had the embargo, and the Russians were breathing down. They were trying to start a fight. Khrushchev was going to bury this country and everybody in it. So we thought we were geared up for Europe. And the thing to remember too about Vietnam in that era and that time is that we were invited there to fight the communist forces. Okay, it's a corrupt government and everything else like that. We were aware of that. But it's never brought up a lot, but it has to be brought up in the open. They were communist terrorists there, murdering, butchering their own people. Just like we have terrorists today in this day and age. They were doing the same thing back then. That was never publicized very much. But that was one of the reasons we were invited there, and that was one of the reasons we went.
And you were aware of that at the time?
Yep. Yes, sir. We fought communist insurgents. Later on, the NVA got it. We engaged the NVA. We fought Pathet Lao, and we fought Khmer Rouge. They all got in the act. Chai Khom, Chinese Republican Army, was there. Yep, we saw their banner. We saw their flag. Happened to have seen Russian officers, but I was not allowed to shoot them. Happened to have seen them and caught a glimpse of a Cuban. So the communists were there, and that was the reason we were there. It was a communist battle, and that was the battlefield. Instead of, we have to remember too, that World War II demolished Europe, and the Marshall Plan went into effect all over the world, and they had just rebuilt Europe in the 60s. Europe is celebrating their rebirth. They didn't want another fight there. This happened to be the place to fight the communists. That was it. That was the battlefield.
So it wasn't that Ho Chi Minh and a ragtag bunch of guys wanted to make things better for their country.
No, there was a communist takeover of a country, and the same thing occurred in Korea. They tried it in Korea, and ended up with a 38th parallel. Well, the French went so far, the United States intervened, and when they intervened, we had North Vietnam and South Vietnam. Then we became the protectors of South Vietnam in the 1950s. We took the French place. Well, you can argue that point. Should we or shouldn't we have? It doesn't matter. The communists still wanted to take over the whole country. That was their aim. That was always their aim. And these people, the Vietnamese are very hardy people. They're warriors. They had for centuries, they had fought the Chinese, they had fought their neighbors, they fought everybody. They fought the Japanese, they fought the French, and of course they fought the Americans. We all know about that. Yeah.
Do you think if we had not intervened, that communism would have spread much further in that area than it did?
Well, it did. Laos, Cambodia, we know about the Khmer Rouge, what they did there. The only country that really stood on its own was Thailand, because they had a strong government. They believed in their king and their kingdom and their, Cambodia was like in a transitionary period there at that time. And the Khmer Rouge, Khmer means the old ways. They wanted to go, but they didn't want to be in the 20th century. They wanted to be back. We're still, use the elephant and, that type of thing. They wanted their old traditions. upheld. You know, so I really believe that it would have been a lot harder to do away with the communists there. Now, the communists in Malaysia, they were taken out and murdered. They were taken out and killed by the government there. So, what was his name? Suharto? Suharto. Yeah. He was very brutal with them. You could not say you're a communist there. You would be shot on the spot. That's how they controlled it there. Yeah.
So, how did you get over to Vietnam? Or tell me about that, or when you got over.
We left San Diego. We were on the troop carrier Breckenridge. It was just a big barge, flat bottom boat. But they crammed all the people they could on it. Went to Hawaii, and then we took the Breckenridge over to Okinawa. Okinawa, we went to Camp Hansen, and we became part of the 9th Marine Regiment there. So we were no longer 5th Marine Regiment. We became 9th Marine Regiment. And Camp Hansen, we got there in March. At Camp Hansen, then we went to the Northern Training Area. Northern Training Area was jungle on the island of Okinawa. And that's where we learned more land navigation, and living out in the open again, of course, and that type of thing. And we got acclimatized. Never seen so much rain, and the mud there was just like, it turned to clay. So when you went walking, you were doing this, your feet were spinning, and your boots were clogged up with mud, and you were just covered with mud, red mud. And then we went south after that. We were in the middle of our training at the NTA when General Walt called everybody together. We went back by truck to Camp Hansen, and we went to the theater there, the base theater, and General Walt had us all in there. And he announced where we were going. And I think so. Hear him today, and see and visualize him. And he said, some of you will return and some of you won't, So, and then from there we boarded ships and we went to, about, 2 or 3 days later, we boarded ships and we went down south to Vietnam. We were on the APA Pickaway.
I meant to ask you on that flat bottom barge that you went overseas on. Did you get seasick at all?
Oh yeah, violently sick. Yeah, we were used to being on the. We practiced amphibious landings here in Camp Pendleton. Well, that's the beach is there, nice. You're only out there for 3 or 4 days. You go around. Back then, you'd go around Catalina. You'd go around the other island out there. And then you'd come in, and make your landing. You'd come in and make your landing, that type of thing, and that was nothing. Oh, thanks. That was nothing compared to what we experienced out there. California, Eastern Pacific has some of the roughest water in the world. Just right offshore here. You go out there for a day, forget it. You think you're in a bathtub, you're not. We all got violently ill. Yeah.
So you went on that APA. Where did you land in Vietnam then?
In Da Nang. We were part of that landing where the people greeted everybody with flowers and leis. You probably saw that in the news, or probably saw photographs of it. Yeah.
That would have been 65, 66?
That was in 65. And then from there...
Now, Da Nang was a big air base, wasn't it?
Da Nang was a big city, a big hub. It was fishing, freight, sea freight. Tankers would pull in there. They could pull right up into the town itself, into the city itself. That was the civilian side of it, and then the air base was there, of course.
And what was your rank at that time?
I was a Lance Corporal, E3. Yeah, I was 19 years old when I got there. And I was a Lance Corporal. I was an assistant squad leader. And my squad leader was Sergeant Giss. He was a Korean War veteran. And we went to south of Da Nang. Well, Da Nang Air Base was actually a French air base, and it still had French fortifications there. So we got to say hello there, and then we went further out, and regimental headquarters was away from the base there. And we stayed there for a while to get climatized and get used to it, you know, the smell.
How long had the Marine presence been there?
Prior to us being there, 4th Marines were there probably 6 months before us. And they had artillery with them, and they had air. Most of the air at that time was off the carriers. It was the Ranger, and I forgot what other one was out there. But the Ranger was there. Not the World War II Ranger, but the 2nd Ranger.
Had they been in many firefights
Oh, yeah.
by this time?
Yeah, 4th Marines had taken that hill right there at Da Nang. I think it was Hill 368.
Well, had they advised you on what the action was going to be like?
Yeah,
What
General Walt did.
What the tactics of the enemy was
Right.
going to be, and all this
Right.
kind of stuff, and what did they tell you?
Right. That we were expected to do, well, how would I put it? It would be smaller patrols, small unit patrols into enemy territory. And our mission was to engage, seek, engage, and destroy the enemy. That was the mission. And we were all advised of that. Now, prior to that, at Camp Henson, General Walt, at that meeting we had at the theater, General Walt did tell us what to expect. You know, that it was not going to be nice. It was going to be brutal.
And was the terrain, was that jungly in that area, or what was that?
It was
like?
rice paddies, mainly swampy. I would say it was swampy because we were just swarmed by insects when we got there. We were fresh meat, you know, the mosquitoes, flies. Guys were getting sick from, I saw a few scars on my arms from the flies would attack you. You know, you'd scratch the mosquito bites. You know, they'd open up a little bit. Then the flies would attack that. And they would bite you. Then you're starting to scratch more. It was pretty terrible, you know. It took us a while to get used to it, you know. But finally we did. And we would go out on patrols from there, from that area there. We'd go out on these patrols, you know, and they would range anywhere from company-size operation to a platoon to a squad, and sometimes it would be three Marines out on their own. You know. And you carried everything. You didn't have a big supply base behind you, you know. I mean, the supplies were there, but you carried the ammunition that you needed, you carried the food you were going to use, and 2 canteens of water. So you traveled light so you could be quick.
You had your M14?
We had M14s at the time, yeah.
And your sidearm also?
Sidearm was a 45.
And did you carry hand grenades or anything like that?
We had hand grenades, we had all that, flares, hand grenades.
And machine guns, were they
Yeah,
available?
M60,
Yeah,
M60
but I mean,
machine gun.
Well, when you had 3 guys going out, you probably weren't taking a machine gun. Were you?
No, it was an automatic rifle and 2 semi-automatic rifles.
And your junior officers, where did they come from? And how were they?
They were outstanding. The platoon commanders, they were 2nd lieutenants, 1st lieutenants.
Like out of Quantico or?
Quantico and Navy ROTC. And there were some that actually went to the Naval Academy, you know. But I'd say the majority of them were Quantico and ROTC. You know, from college, Naval College ROTC, and they seemed to have liked it. We had one platoon commander. He was from he was a graduate of Notre Dame, Mr. McGowan. And
probably none of them had experience over in. Was that their first time in?
That was
Vietnam as
everybody's
well?
first time in combat, except for the Korean War veterans.
And tell me about your first patrol, if you remember it, and what you were feeling at the time.
Well, our true first engagement was at Da Nang Air Base. We were at this regimental CP, but then they brought some of us back to Da Nang Air Base to guard it. And in front of us, we were up on this berm, and these French positions, the old French positions, were around there. And on front of that berm, there was the wire, concertina wire, apron, the wire aprons were there. And across the road which is Highway 1, beautiful highway. Highway 1 was there, and there was a little village we used to call Dog Patch, out of Little Abner, Dog Patch. Well, these guys got, these Vietnamese got to drinking and yelling, and they came across that road, and we caught them in the wire. That was our true first engagement. And it wasn't very nice. I mean, it was pretty brutal, you know. But they were shooting at us, and we had the rules of engagement were in force. You had to defend yourself. You had to defend your position.
Now, these were NVAs, or were they?
They were well, we called them Viet Cong, but they were NF. What were they? No. National Fighters. Or, yeah, I forgot what the term was, but we just shorted it out to Viet Cong. You know, Victor Charlies. You know.
Did you take any casualties?
Yeah, we did that night, but it was friendly fire, which happened occasionally. A Marine came up from behind the line, jumped in a foxhole, and the Marine he jumped in next to, turned and fired. Yeah. That was Corporal Tate that was killed that night. I forgot who killed him. It was an accident, though. And then the patrols that we were on, I can remember the first one. Yeah. It was pitch black. There's no, I mean, away from the air base, there's no lights, and away from the city, there's no lights. So you're in these.
Were most of your patrols at night?
Yeah, most of the patrols were. Well, combat patrols were done during the day, but the ambush patrols were mainly at night. And we did ambush patrols during the day, but a majority of them were at night. And sometimes you'd be out there the whole night. As soon as it was dark till the following morning, you know, you'd set up in different positions.
Would you try and take prisoners if you could?
We took prisoners, right. It was very important to take prisoners. To gain information, of course, you know. And they're still practicing it today. They take the prisoners, and today they're taking the prisoners, turning them over to the Iraqis. And we did the same thing there. We would take prisoners. Of course, they would have to go to a South Vietnamese area or group, because those were the interrogators.
We've heard so much about how the Japanese would, you know, fight to the, you know, you could hardly take them because they would either kill themselves. Was there any of your enemy like that, or?
I would say the North Vietnamese army, they would fight to the bitter end. The Viet Cong would fight and they would disengage so they could fight another day. That was their attitude. And, you know, we became like them. We did. And that's how we got to beating them. That's how we won our area. You know, that little space that we had in that war, that's how we defeated them. We became them.
Like hit and run kind of
Hit
stuff?
and run tactics, you know, being them. You know, after a while, the insects didn't leave you. I mean, they would leave you alone because you smelled just like any other animal out there. You know, I mean, you really smelled rank. You never forget that jungle smell or that swamp smell, that rotten vegetation type of smell. Yeah. And we were given injections for typhoid, you know, because there was dead bodies around there. I mean, you could go to the river to get water, and there's a body floating down there, or a dead animal, you know, or there'd be 3 or 4 bodies floating through there, and you just filled everybody's canteens.
You know, back in those days, you hear stories, or since then, that drugs was rampant, and you know, our forces over there. Did you see any evidence of that?
Not at that time. And the people, the veterans I spoken to about at that time there, that was like in the late stages of the war. It wasn't the men in the field. It wasn't the men doing the actual fighting. It was the darn truck drivers, the clerks, and the supply guys in the rear with the gear. You didn't want to be drunk. You didn't want to be high. if these guys are shooting at you. If you're out there and folks are shooting, yeah. So, you know.
Yeah. So how long were you in that Da Nang area?
That was our base of operations.
And how far out from Da Nang would you go?
We went as far as An Hoi, which was like 30 miles, 40 miles south of Da Nang. Sometimes you went by helicopter, sometimes you went by Amtrak, by amphibious tractor, other times you went on foot. And we just ranged from there.
Hold that thought for a minute. I gotta change tape. You doing okay?
Yeah, I need some more water.
Here, just take this.
Am I holding up okay?
You're
You're
doing
doing
fine.
great. You're doing great.
I
But
almost
just take
started
this
to cry a
hold.
couple times.
Just hang on to that hold.
It almost got me a couple times.
Well, no, you don't worry about it. It's fine.
Would you like some?
I will. Thank you. Well, you're doing a fine job.
Hey, you're pretty interesting.
You're, this is what I say. You can't believe when they're with people who understand what you're talking about, how you can, these things come back.
Yeah.
And it's good for you to relive this.
Well, there's something to be said too about General Walt. You know, there was an area there that I'll explain it in a minute here.
These things are important for us to hear, for everyone to hear.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad.
And you're young enough, believe me, to remember it well.
Well, I live it just about every day. I never forget it, you know. So. Okay, I'd like to say something about this one area that we went to. You were talking about where we ranged to from Da Nang. There was a hill there. It was Hill 55. It was 55 meters high. And it was the ugliest piece of dirt you ever saw in your life. There was nothing there. On the other side of it was a river. And beyond that was, it was their territory. NVA, Viet Cong, they ranged there. That was theirs. And we would have our missions into their territory. And there was always a fight. The rally point was Hill 55. So if you got cut off, or some, you know, you got lost, you went to Hill 55. Because you could see that for, you know. General Walt would meet us there. And he knew us. He knew his men. He knew what platoon you were in. He knew your name, your rank. It was amazing. The man was just an amazing person. And
Do you know his background?
he was a World War II veteran. He received the Navy Cross in World War II. He was an infantryman. And he received the Navy Cross in an engagement. I can't recall what island they were on. But they were being clobbered by the Japanese. So he disassembled, him and his men disassembled an artillery piece. And they drug it up a hill in pieces with the ammunition. And they reassembled it. And they gave the Japanese back. You know. Which goes to say you don't want to make a Marine mad. You know. They're nice people, but you get them mad and you forget it. You know. They're going to get you. He was quite the man, and he wasn't very tall in stature. He might have just been a little bit taller than me, but very bright individual. You could see it, you know. You knew he was the leader. You know. So that was Hill 55.
Were there any rivers in that area?
Rivers, creeks, and. The land navigation, everything we learned at Camp Pendleton, everything we learned in Okinawa, it paid off. Everything you learned from boot camp on was to prepare you for this, was to prepare you for combat. It was not, Marine Corps is very, very dedicated. There's some Army units that are that way, and I think there's more Army units that are that way now. But everything you learned, even in boot camp, you know, the hardships you went through there, it was to prepare you. The sleep deprivation you went through in boot camp, the pain, physical pain, Let's prepare you for this. Camp Pendleton, the 5th Marines, we spent all the time out in the field, in the hills, the mountains. We even went to cold weather training in Bridgeport, California, where you learned how to use cold weather gear, how to survive in the winter, snow caves. It prepare you for any situation, because you might have ended up in Europe, fighting in some country over there, Poland, or in the middle of the snow. I learned to ski. I learned everything there in Bridgeport, and everything was in preparation for this.
Could you depend upon any intelligence gathering from the local people that lived around there?
There was some of it you could, but most of our intelligence, a lot of it came from, in the beginning, it came from the South Vietnamese and the South Vietnamese Army. And the difficulty there was the translation. They didn't seem to possess the same amount of urgency that we possessed. Let's pursue these guys. Let's go after them. They would say, no, we'll just wait, we'll wait. You had to get permission to do everything. And you had to get permission from the South Vietnamese Army, and sometimes even the government. And there was occasions where we could have pursued and engaged, but we couldn't. We had to stop. There were several occasions that happened to us. But that intelligence, some of it was, if I had to rate it percentage-wise, I would put it in maybe about 50% as being good. After a while, we used our own. We would go on these patrols and we would not be seen. We didn't want to engage anybody. It was just a reconnaissance patrol. And we would gather our own information that way. Just movements, we would look for signs of people or signs of the enemy.
Were they always wearing uniforms, and were they different kinds, or what?
No, the NVA wore a uniform. Theirs was like they wore a soft hat, a soft cover. It was like a rain hat. They had a green uniform, tan. Some of them had pith helmets.
What was your communication between units when you were out on patrol?
Oh,
What did you have? And
we had hand signals, of course, and then we had the Korean War, World War II radios. It was more like Korean War, the PRC-6, and then we had the PRC-10. None of them worked worth a darn. You could just throw those things in the river if you wanted to. And then later on, we got better communications gear, better radios. Went to the 25, and that was the one the platoon commander had. But in the squads, we still had the 6s. That was the big, they used to call it the walkie-talkie. Great big thing like that. It looked like a loaf of bread or a football you held up to that.
what about air support?
It was great. We had the Navy.
What kind?
Well, we had the carrier planes. I think it was the little Skyhawk, the white one.
Could you communicate with them?
Our platoon commanders could, and we had air with us, air liaison. They were with us at an occasion. But then there was occasions, when you had to have permission to get a strike.
Political.
Political, yeah. There was politics involved in it.
Yeah.
Do you recall any time where you felt maybe you were surrounded and maybe you weren't going to get out of this situation?
Sure.
And if so, how did you get out of it?
Fighting. You just relied on the Marines around you, and you relied on yourself, and you fought your way out of it, because nobody was coming to get you. There were some nights there where you could have been on. I've told my wife this, It seemed like you could have been walking on the moon. There's nobody else around you. And if anything happened to you, there's no rescue. So you learned how to rely on yourself and your fellow Marines. You know, that happened quite a few times. I experienced that quite a bit.
Your M14, how many rounds did it have? A clip, or how did it?
I had a magazine, 20-round magazine. Every fifth round was a tracer, or you could take the tracers out. Sometimes we'd use tracers, sometimes we wouldn't. But you didn't want to use tracer rounds at night, because that way they could shoot back at you. We used a lot of armor-piercing rounds, the black-tipped armor-piercing rounds. We used them, because they could penetrate anything. M14 was great because you could shoot through a thicket of bamboo, and the rounds would go through. I don't know about the M16, but the M14 was great for that. And people complained about its weight and its length and all that, but it was a long rifle, and you could use it for close combat, or you could use it for shooting down range. It was good up to 800,000 yards, depending on the shooter, depending on the marksman.
Well, when it's dark at night, how does marksmanship come into that?
It's your experience in how to use your weapon. You didn't aim at night. You pointed and fired. And you didn't look down the barrel whilst the muzzle flash would blind you. Because at night, the M14 had a flash suppressor on it, like all NATO weapons or rifles do. And that muzzle flash would go out like that. It'd be an arc like that. So you pointed and you squeeze the trigger.
A noise you perhaps heard, or just instinct that you kind of know that somebody's going to be there?
Target. Somebody's there. You didn't do that arbitrarily. You didn't do that because you didn't want to expose yourself. So, if you were in an ambush, the enemy came into your ambush site, which they did, then you sprung the ambush. In the ambush, you had a...
And you might see a silhouette.
You would see a silhouette, yeah. And they could... This is what we did. This was part of a Marine Corps honor, or rules of engagement. We would challenge whoever walked in that ambush site. We would challenge by saying, halt, who goes there? And they would turn around. Well, of course, they would shoot. Well, then we'd open up. But that was part of our rules of engagement. We were bound to do that. We had to do that. It was none of this. There's been a lot of stories, exaggerated stories, I think, about U.S. troops going brutal, going feral, or whatever you want to call it. But a lot of that was I think, a lot of hype and a lot of BS.
Did the enemy hide out in the villages and things like that?
Yeah. One of my worst experiences over there is we tracked these guys for a couple of days. They were Viet Cong. They had ambushed some Marines. They had ambushed a platoon of Marines and wiped them out. Didn't hear about that, did you? Yeah. That was pretty brutal. Wonder why come they didn't publicize that over here. Anyway, we went after these guys and we tracked them down after a couple of days, and we got them penned in there in this village. And these bastards came out and they were using the women and children as shields. Yeah. So they would blend in,
So they were what you might call irregular troops to be a Cong. They didn't really dress in a uniform.
No, they were a cadre. They didn't wear uniforms. They wore their regular clothes, which consisted of, during the daytime they would wear, regular work clothes, which was whiter. But at night, they would generally wear the black pajamas, And their weapon of choice, of course, was the AK-47 or whatever European rifle or weapon was still laying around from the French, so.
And booby traps? Did you?
Yep, there were a lot of those there.
And what were they like?
Chinese communist grenades. And a lot of them were homemade. by homemade, I mean they would have the molds and they would make the steel grenades themselves. And the ironic thing is they would fill them with the fertilizer that we gave them as U.S. aid. The bomb that fertilizer and diesel fuel makes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was fertilizer U.S. aid gave them for their crops. The granulated fertilizer, the ammonia nitrate, you could buy at the hardware store for your lawn. We were finding it over there.
Could you find these booby traps and disarm them or whatever?
Yeah, we did that. We would look for signs on the trail. A lot of places were marked with a rag or a piece of cloth, Didn't have to be anything big. Just something irregular, something that didn't fit. You learn to look for that. We had gone to, this is along the line of booby traps. We had gone to this area, and I can't remember the time of year it was. It might have been in '66, early '66. It was on the border in Cambodia, in Laos. And there was an outpost there, and it was an ammunition. It was a regular Vietnamese army outpost, South Vietnamese army outpost on their side of the border. Well, we went to the other side of the border. Okay. When we were over there on the other side of the border, away from that outpost, that place had become overrun. Well, these guys took all the ammunition out of there. They took the artillery rounds, they took all of our claymores, the American ammunition, they took it out of there, and then they used it against us. So we went to an area where we found our own bouncing Bettys. Now, that was the type of device that would explode and go up in the air 4 or 5 feet, then it would explode again. So it'd cut you down twice, And we found a lot of those. And, of course, the artillery rounds, they were 105s and 155s. They could turn those into a mine also. A booby trap, landmine type of thing. Yeah.
How far was that border from Da Nang?
It's quite a distance. We had to go in a helicopter ride.
Okay, but you're still out of the.
We're still
your
up.
base
Yeah.
camp.
Yeah, we were kind of around that area. Yeah.
And I guess the helicopters landed. You didn't jump out of them, probably.
Yeah, we landed.
How many guys could they carry? The helicopter.
We could only get like a squad and a half in one helicopter. Those were the old ones, turbine engine, not jet engines. Hueys came in the mid '60s, late '60s.
Were you ever under fire when you were in a helicopter?
Yeah, that was quite an experience too. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, you probably heard the story about the guys sitting on their flak jackets and their helmets, because the helicopter floor didn't have no armor underneath it. So you sat on that, and you prayed, and you had your rifle, you were looking at it. Before you left it, before you got to your LZ, the crew chief would give you a thumbs up, or he'd tap the squad leader on the shoulder, and then you put your armor back on. But you could sit there, and you could see the holes go through the helicopter. Couldn't hear it because of the noise of the rotor, but you could start seeing little daylight, pencil holes, the helicopter skin. So, yeah.
I think you alluded to the fact that you did get a little more religious when you got over there.
Oh, yeah.
Did you go to church, or did they have church there?
The chaplain would come to the field and give services, especially if we'd had a pretty rough time and we lost some troops, he'd be there.
Any particular denomination that you were?
Well, we were all pretty religious, It was it didn't matter if it was Catholic, chaplain, Baptist. It didn't matter. Everybody was praying.
What about your Navy corpsmen? Did you have those near patrol near you?
Yeah, they were with us all the time. The doc, we used to call them a doc.
And
Yeah.
good people?
Very outstanding people. Yeah. One's been written about. He's in a few of the books. Doug Lindstrom. I think he was from Minnesota. It got pretty bad around Marble Mountain. That was in '65 and '66. It got pretty ugly around there. And Doc Lindstrom came and He says, hey, this 45 is not helping me. He says, I need something. So we came up with the idea, because the Navy corpsman cannot carry a rifle. Right? You can carry a sidearm, but not a rifle. So we got him a shotgun. And he started carrying the Mossberg, the double-aught buck. And he felt comfortable with that. That was full joke. Mossberg. And then we started using them too. We got them in our units too. Because that area around there, west of Marble Mountain, southwest of Marble Mountain, it was pretty densely populated, and a lot of thickets of the bamboo. They were like hedgerows. You know, that's how they divided their property up, was bamboo. That tropical bamboo that grows, that they use for structures, you know. So that double-aught buck would penetrate. But the corpsmen were there at your side all the time, and they did an outstanding job.
You mentioned at one time that you were wounded?
Yep. Yeah, that was south of Marble Mountain, southwest of Marble Mountain. That was on April 7th, 1966. Yeah. We tripped a booby trap. My rifleman set off a booby trap. It almost blew off his arm, his left arm. It was a grenade. And I thought I was just hit by dirt clods, you know, because of dirt and dust flying around. It turns out I had a piece of shrapnel on my leg.
How far away were you from it, from the explosion?
From the explosion, I might have been like 6 feet away, maybe. Yeah. So we were evacuating him, getting him on the helicopter, and then they grabbed me and they put me on it, and I was resisting them. I said, "No, I'm okay." And they go, "Look at yourself," you know, and there was blood coming out of my leg. It wasn't the doc that put me on there. It was these other Marines. They threw me on the helicopter. So,
Something about your dog tags?
well, this was one of the patrols that we were talking about earlier. We were at south of Da Nang.
Yeah.
Had a village called Dong Song. And what we were doing there was we were providing protection on this bridge that had just been rebuilt over a creek, over a stream. Well, we were getting sniper fire from this village, Dong Song. So this other Marine and I, Mac, we got the bright idea. We're going to go after that sniper. And we did it on our own. We didn't have permission to do anything. We just went and did it. Well, that night, we went after him, and we found him, and Mac was in front of me, and he challenged this man. He was a Viet Cong. He challenged him, and the guy opened up. He shot Mac in the arm. Mac went down. His name was Robert McIntyre, but we called him Little Mac. Anyway, Mac went down, and I opened fire on this man, and he spun around and opened fire on me. Well, that round that's in there, the one that's attached to the dog tags, that one's jammed up. That jammed in the chamber of his weapon.
Really?
Oh.
And that's what saved me. Now the round that's there intact, there's no gunpowder in there. The primer's still there. That round that's intact was the next round in his magazine. And him and I were shooting it out like less than 6 feet away from each other. And I had the M14, and he had that automatic weapon there. So I kept that with me all the time I was in Vietnam. It came like not only did I have my rosary and a few other religious items, this became another one.
Yeah.
And these are my dog tags from that era. And here's my little sea ration can opener. We used to call that the John Wayne. Yeah, everything was based on John Wayne back then. Yeah. Don't be a John Wayne. Don't be a cowboy. You know. Come back alive. You know. Don't be a hero type thing. That kind of attitude. But, yeah.
Well, the helicopter was how far did you have to go, or how long did you wait till the chopper came out?
To be evacuated?
Mm-hmm.
Not at any time at all. It was like less than a half an hour, depending on where you were at, too.
Is this at night?
This is at night. We evacuated Mac at night, and the helicopter was right there. As soon as we radioed in on it, we radioed with our PRC-6. We didn't have a radio when Mac and I were on that patrol. We didn't have a radio with us. I drug Mac back, and plus I carried that soldier with me, the Viet Cong. I had him on my back because we had to bring back proof of what we did. So I had his rifle, Mac's rifle. No, Mac was still dragging his rifle, but I had to lug that guy back. Plus I was helping Mac get out of there.
Matt got along okay.
Yeah.
Do you hear from him at all?
No, I saw him one time in North Carolina, and it's odd when we got together. Then we didn't want to talk too much about it. Yeah.
Have you kept in contact with any of the guys that you were with over there?
From Riverside, yeah. There's a couple of them that Richard Romero. I mentioned his name earlier. I saw him. I was coming in from a patrol with my squad, and he was with the headquarters company, and he was in 81 Mortars. Well, he was attached to our company, M Company, 3rd Battalion, 9th Marines. And I'm walking through this village, and I'm reporting in, it's like just came back from patrol. I had 3 prisoners with me, and I wanted to turn the prisoners over, but they told me I had to hang on to them. Well, Richard's over there. He's calling me Big Ed. That was my nickname. He's, hey, Big Ed, come here. Yeah, I got to talk to you. And I recognized his voice right away. Yeah. And there's a couple other guys I seen from Riverside over there. Yeah.
Did you develop really close friendships in your outfit, or was that frowned upon for fear that, somebody's not going to make it?
No, because we were all together from Camp Pendleton to Okinawa to Vietnam. The ones that we didn't develop relationships were the replacements. They were not trained as well as we were. So it was hard to, it was like on-the-job training for them. And they're learning as people are trying to shoot them,
Were they smart enough to depend on you for?
Yep. Yeah. They weren't as physically fit as we were. We were worn down, sick most of the time, but we were still physically, we were fitter than they were. And they were coming right from the United States fresh.
What was the casualty, or how many out of your outfit did you guys lose over there?
One day we lost almost the whole platoon of us. There was a lot of wounded guys that day. That would happen occasionally. My squad was down to 3 men one time.
And a squad being?
14 is original. That's with the machine gun. Yeah, about 13 guys. Anyway, when I was E3, Sergeant Gist got wounded, and I was his assistant squad leader. I was a grenadier. Well, I got bumped up to squad leader as an E3. And then I was replaced by an NCO. We got another NCO in there. He took over for a while. So it went off and on, And I got promoted to E4 over there. And I became promoted. I was this team leader, fire team leader, and squad leader again. Just depended on who was there, And you filled in whatever position was necessary.
When did you become sergeant?
I became sergeant after I came back to the United States at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
Did they have much trouble stopping the bleeding in your leg?
No. No, I didn't hit any of it was near the femoral artery. And that's why the shrapnel stayed in there. They didn't want to go in there and dig it out for fear of rupturing that artery.
You still have it?
Yep.
In there? Oh.
Yeah. It shows up on x-rays.
And most of your casualties were from close range or sniper fire, or what would you say?
explosives, small arms fire. The explosives, they were very good with mortars, and they had rockets. They had a 120 rocket. They had mortars. They had 60s, and they had the equivalent of our 81 millimeter mortar. I forgot it was. I don't know if they were 82s, Russian.
And you had a mortar squad along with you too?
Well,
You guys?
mortars were with headquarters, and sometimes you had them there with you, and other times you had fire orders for them. The patrols were set up so that you could go to a checkpoint. So it's like, say you had a patrol that was so many kilometers out. Picture a fan. So you're on this fan patrol and you go out here, and then there's another squad of Marines over here. They're doing this, right? That's why you challenge too in ambushes, because sometimes you lose your bearings and you'd end up in somebody else's sector, and you might get ambushed by Marines. Okay, well in that patrol route, there could be 5 checkpoints, depending on how long it was, or 4. So if you got in a jam, you went to checkpoint. You either went to the checkpoint in front of you, ahead of you, or you fell back to the checkpoint. So that's when you got on the radio and requested mortars. Yeah, we did that several times too.
And when you brought air support, did they ever use napalm?
Yeah.
What did that at night?
No, not at night.
Not
It
at
was
night.
during the daytime.
During the day.
Yeah.
Okay. Like how close to you would it be? Maybe.
It was pretty terrifying. You could feel the heat from it. Yeah.
You knew it was coming?
Yeah. Yeah. You just knew it. I mean, you could tell the way the plane was approaching too. Navy, one would drop a tank, then the second part of the squad, their squadron, the second plane would come in and strafe, but he would use white phosphorus. The white phosphorus burns in air, so that would ignite the napalm. Yeah. And that wasn't used. That's another thing too. It's part of the movies, part of Hollywood, part of propaganda. Was that was not used indiscriminate. That was used for a reason. It wasn't just used because we were too lazy to go after these guys. Yeah. It was used because we were being overwhelmed.
So you're wounded. Where did they take you? Back to Da Nang?
Yeah, you went to that famous place, China Beach. Everybody knows about that. Yeah. That was our hospital there.
There was a TV show called China Beach. I believe. Was that the same
That was
place?
it was based on
It was
that.
based on that.
Was that an hour?
That was at Marble Mountain. That was north of Marble Mountain, south of Da Nang.
Yeah, I never really watched that, but I know that
Yeah.
it's, and I've been thinking about, you can get them now sometimes, putting them here in the library. I think it'd be good, something good. Did you ever watch the show?
No, I didn't like it.
I mean,
I know I've tuned it in and I say yes.
I don't want to necessarily get
Hollywood.
something that it's not realistic so much,
Yeah.
but
That's a question that I would like to ask you. Out of all the Marine movies or that type of movie of the Vietnam conflict war, which do you think is the closest to reality?
I think that's a good question, Doctor. I think reality, Full Metal Jacket, where they went to boot camp and they were together. They meet up again in Vietnam. Where there's scenes in there where they're going down the trail, they're talking the talk to each other, BSing with each other, calling each other by their nicknames, that type of thing. That was pretty much real, and then the scenes of the firefights, Our fighting was done mainly out in the open. You'd say, jungles, rice paddies, stuff like that. They were portraying Hue, the Battle of Hue, where they were fighting in the cityscape. It was the same thing.
Yeah.
Same tactics, everything. The same emotion, where the squad leaders doesn't know what to do. Should I go in? Should I wait? Should I? He hesitates. Yeah, you went through that whole thing, even though you knew what was expected of you. You still tried to weigh everything out.
Yeah.
So I would say that was pretty real. You know, in the sense of,
Sure.
yeah, of the talk and everything, and the firefight.
That's good.
Yeah.
Were you or any of your guys in a firefight where you're being overrun so much that you called in air support, maybe right on top of you? Where
No, we didn't. That was, we would call it in close. What we did call in was on ourselves was our own artillery.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, we take cover and we would take cover and take cover. That means find a place, safe place. We're calling in mortars. We're going to call in. Went to, occasionally call in 105s. Those artillery pieces. And there was bracketing. Bracketing with the air burst was a 105 artillery. The air burst would go off. You could have it up to 20 feet off the deck, 10 feet off the deck. So here's this artillery round with a fuse set in it. When it reaches a certain point, it'll explode over your head. You better be in cover. You did that. That happened occasionally too. It's called bracketing. It's a term that we use quite a bit.
So the idea, hopefully, you'll be down and they'll be up when it comes in.
Yeah.
Up for a while.
Yeah. It would keep them away from you, keep them at bay. Yeah. And the bracket was a square.
It wouldn't necessarily kill them all or make them run away. You still would have to fight your way out.
You still had to fight. Yeah.
And what is that like, being...
It's terrifying because you could hear the rounds coming in, but you don't know where they're going to land, especially mortars. You don't know where they're going to land. You could hear them leave the tube. Even your own 81s, you could hear them leaving the tube. And you knew approximately where they were going to be.
But when you say you took cover, about the only thing you do is just get prone, I would think. I mean, there wasn't rocks to hide behind, there's things like
There
that.
was, in some of these villages, they had their own, they had their own bomb shelters built above ground. They were built with bamboo and mud, and you couldn't, artillery wouldn't penetrate them. So if you could find an empty one, you got in there. If not, you got someplace low, a ditch, a creek, someplace.
How long were you in the combat zone then without R&R? How long, or where did you have R&R?
I had R&R. I got R&R in April. Just before I got wounded, I got R&R. Before I was wounded.
Where'd you go?
I went back to Okinawa. Yeah.
How long were you there then?
5 days.
And then back to the same outfit?
Back to, yeah. We took turns rotating in and out. And I waited last in my squad. I waited last when I let everybody go. So the only thing I had left was Okinawa. So I went back to Okinawa.
So you're there, 3 or 4 days, you got all cleaned up and getting some rest. It's time to go back. What goes through your mind?
It's hard to tell you. You can't wait to get back. Strange as it seems, you're safe,
Your
you're
buddies.
clean, you're dry, there's food, there's cold beer, whiskey if you want it, but you can't wait to get back.
Not to let down the team.
Yeah.
Not to let the team down.
Yeah. To be there again.
Okay, so at China Beach, how long were you there then?
Oh, I might have been there a week and a half, and then first thing they had me in a wheelchair, and I got rid of that. Then they gave me crutches, and I got rid of them. And then I would just walk up and down by grabbing the bed rails, the foot of the bed. We were in Quonset huts there. And what motivated me was my rifleman was still down there. He was in the bunk down the way, and he was going to get shipped out. They were trying to decide whether they were going to amputate his arm or not. They decided to keep it until he got stateside. And there were a lot of wounded Marines in there. I was not the worst. Was not. And I would wander around there. And I went to intensive care. It was like an ICU unit there. I had seen this Marine out in the field before. He was in artillery. And there he was. His legs were blown off. And he asked me to bring him a soda. That kind of motivated, seeing all the other wounded Marines and knowing I was not that bad off. In other words, I didn't feel sorry for myself at all. Then the thing that happened there was the unit was getting ready to ship out of that area. Our platoon was going to leave. The company was going to leave. The whole battalion was leaving that area. I was scheduled to go to Iwakuni, Japan for treatment there because my leg had become somewhat infected there, And the guys from the platoon came over to see us, and they saw Gris. He was the wounded Marine that was leaving. We went over to talk to him, and then they came over to talk to me, and they told me, "We need you. We're going back. We're leaving." So I got out of the rack. I had all my gear underneath the bunk there. I got dressed and left. And the corpsman tried to stop me. And told him that I had to go. So I went back. That was my ticket out of there. I didn't have to go, but I did.
So how many more months did you spend there then?
That was in April, and I stayed there till June.
And were you physically able to carry on like you were before?
No, because there was still a lot of pain, and there were still stitches. I still had stitches in my leg. And that was at the time they used wire. They used stainless steel wire for everything. My leg was all wired up, and oh man, I tell you, it hurt. And the corpsman is the one who pulled the stitches out. And
So were you able to go out on patrols or anything?
Yep. Made myself do it. So.
In hindsight, would you take the same route?
Yeah, I would do it again. Yeah. So all of this prepares me for my second part of my life. The other part of my life is I got out of the Marine Corps at age 21. And I'd already experienced all this and had the opportunity to re-enlist, of course, and become an E6. And I didn't want to do it anymore. And I told my reason, I told the officer and I told the staff NCO that was trying to get me to re-enlist, I was too young. I had never seen anything else but the Marine Corps. So I came back to Riverside.
Okay, well, let's back up for a second.
I'm trying to get out of here.
Oh, no. Are you tired? You doing okay? You need to take a break at all?
No, okay. I think I'm doing pretty good because I can talk about it.
Absolutely. But, so in June, do they send your whole outfit back home, or how did that work?
They sent you back individually. You rotated out individually. And then they rotated it. That's when they start this rotation thing of a new face, a new guy, an FNG. I ain't going to tell you what that means, but it's the new guy.
Yeah.
That's when they started that. It was in the 60s. It was at that time.
Well, explain that again to me.
They would rotate you out individually, not as a whole unit.
Not as a whole unit.
Not as a whole platoon or anything like that. You're rotated out of there because they wanted to keep the experience going to train the new guys that were coming in.
And what were your feelings that day, that last day when you...
I was overjoyed to get out of there. We were at an airstrip up in the mountains. I just couldn't believe it. I was leaving.
Did it fly you back home?
Yeah, we went to Da Nang, You know, we filled out some paperwork there. We stayed there for a night, and then the next day we flew to Okinawa, back to Okinawa. We went to Kadena Air Base. And in Kadena, they took us back to Camp Hansen on trucks. Camp Hansen, we stayed in the same barracks we stayed in the year before. Couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. We're in the same barracks a year later. And there's only a handful of us left, you know, that were, you know. So.
And then we're into San Diego. They fly back into there. Or?
No, we flew from there. We went to the Northwest Airlines. Flew us to El Toro
That's right.
with a stopover in. It was like a layover in Alaska. And you could get off the plane there. I just stayed on the plane. I didn't want to get off the plane and get lost. I didn't know I was going home. But I looked out the window and it was snowing. That was in June. Never forget that. And then came to El Toro. And I had this Marine with me. We'd been together all this time for years. And he panicked. So I went with him to LAX from El Toro. We paid these other Marines to drive us over there. We paid him $50 to take us over there. He was stationed at El Toro, this other guy. So this friend of mine, he went through this. He was really shaken up. He said, "You got to go with me. You got to go. I'll get lost. I don't want to get lost." So I went with him over there, and then from there I caught a bus out of there. No, I caught a cab and took me downtown. And by the time I got to downtown Los Angeles, the bus stations were all closed. The bus depots were closed. So I went across the street to this restaurant, you know. And I went in there with the intention of having a beer. But the people there, they gave me a platter of food and everything was paid for. You got it, you know. I was wearing a uniform. And there was a man there, he gave me a ride from downtown over to the freeway. And at the freeway, I started hitchhiking, and I got another ride. And that ride there, it was a young man and his girlfriend. They were out cruising. They took me from Los Angeles to Riverside. He took me to my grandma's house, you know. And they wouldn't take any money, you know. But I snuck some money out of my pocket, and I put it on their seat when I left the car.
Pretty good reaction for.
We had only been out of combat about not even 2 weeks, maybe a week and a half.
Was this before the reception that was not very nice that our military was getting when they came back home? I mean, when you came back, were most of the military treated nicely when they came home, or?
No, that was already happening. That was already going on where people were frowning on you and giving you dirty looks and calling you names and stuff like that.
Did you ever see it happen to you?
Yeah, it happened to me. And it was like job discrimination.
Like in Riverside?
Riverside area.
That area.
Yeah. There was job discrimination, name calling. I went to Riverside City College, and I never told anybody about it, about my experiences. I didn't talk about it. But somehow or another, it came out. I don't know how. Maybe it's because us veterans would hang out together. And one of my English professors, he announced it in the class that I was amongst them, a killer amongst them. You know? Really rotten guy. You know? Yeah. So that was, you know. And then there was a lot of scorn back then. You know, a lot of things were said about you. Yeah.
And how did that affect you?
Just made me try harder.
Well, did you expect that, or?
No, we didn't expect that. We didn't expect anything. We were just happy to be back. You talk to, I'm going to try to get some of the men that were with me from Riverside. I'm going to try to get them to come here.
That'd be great.
You know, we all became professionals. We've all retired already. You know, I've got a good friend. He saved my life over there, Ernie Arroyo. he became a corrections officer, and he just retired also. But he went through the ranks of corrections officers.
How did he save your life?
We were on an operation, and we got pinned down on a rice paddy. My squad was getting hammered by machine guns, and the rest of the company was moving in different directions. And somehow or another, we got engaged, and we were fighting back. We were shooting back, but these guys just wouldn't go away. So Ernie had his team was 60 mortars, 60 millimeter mortars, which was a small tube, real portable. He came running up and he said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I told him, I said, "Over there." And I just pointed in that direction. They had set their tube up and they started firing. And he said, "There." And he took off. And I had known him for years, We all grew up together.
So you came back and went to your did you live with your grandparents then for a little while?
Yeah. My grandfather had already passed away years ago, but I was back with my grandmother again when I got out of the Marine Corps.
And did you get a job right away? Or?
No, I bummed around for a while.
And did you start RCC?
Went through my savings.
And when did you start Riverside RCC?
Oh, geez, that was probably in 69, 70.
So you had been back about how long then?
About a year and a half. I went to work I didn't work right away because I was still thinking about re-enlisting and going back. But then this relative of mine found out about my plan, and my grandmother found out about it. So I had to go down to Roar Aircraft in Riverside and fill out an application. They made me go down there. And I had a promise I would never do that again. I had a promise my grandmother not to do that.
And how did you psychologically adapt to civilian life when you came back?
I really didn't. It took a long time for me to get used to it. Not being a Marine, but it just doesn't wear off. It does not wear off. It's still present today. But it took a while to adapt to it.
Do you have nightmares, things like that?
Sure. Yeah. Still do to this day.
Did you get any help or around at that time? Or?
No. What happened was the VA facility that was available to us then was in Long Beach, and it's kind of like out of the area. Yeah. And when at that time too, they really didn't want anything to do with this here. The VA hospitals didn't. They opened the one in Loma Linda in 1986. I went down there, and they told me to get out of there. There's nothing wrong with me. That was in 1986. So I was already a fireman. I became a fireman in 1970. Was it 71, B? In 1971, I became a fireman. So in 86, I went to go get help because it was really strong. I mean, really, the nightmares came, everything. I could totally recall everything again. For some reason, I don't know what opened that box back up again, but it was open. And so I went to go get help, and they told me to get the hell out of there, more or less. There's nothing wrong with you. And so I didn't go back again until after I retired as a fireman. If I'd have pursued it then, I'd have had to quit the department that I was in, fire department. Because the psychological, the nightmares, the problem, the reoccurring.
Sure. They would have said that you weren't fit to be a
Yeah,
fireman.
they would have said that, because I found that out later.
Oh.
Yeah.
So maybe it turned out for the best. Huh?
Yeah. There was another veteran there. He went off. We used to call it, well, you probably heard that term too. You were in the Navy. Went off the pier, more or less, and he got bounced off the department. So
the second time you went back, did that help you any?
Well, the second time I went back, I had to fight for it again, but I wouldn't turn away from it this time. What really motivated me that time was I talked to this other veteran there, And he was never in combat. He was never in the Vietnam War. But he was receiving 40% disability for a knee injury. His knee injury was from basketball. I'm going, okay. This works out really good. So, yeah, I can laugh about it now, but it really ticked me off back then. You know? So, that was it. Yeah.
But I mean, did it help at that point in time? Were they able to help you?
In the 90s, yeah. Or when did I start there? Was it 2002, wasn't it? I've been going there 7 years now. 2002.
Okay.
So when I started going there.
And
It's helped, yeah. It's helped.
Psychologically.
Yeah.
okay, well, let's go back now. Well, first of all, did you meet anyone special? Did you have any special girlfriends about when you came back, or when did you first meet?
No, I was pretty much a loner, and then I met my first wife and married her. We were married for 10 years. But then that relationship was really bad. She was very demanding, very,
Well, did you have any children by your first?
Yeah, we had 2 children.
And what are their names?
Dulcinea Sanchez and Joseph Sanchez.
And do they live?
They live in Paris, California.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have contact with them much?
No, they're in their 30s now, and they're pretty much keep to themselves.
And their mother's, what was her name?
Avelina.
Okay.
Yeah.
And okay. During that 10 year, when you separated, were you at the fire department then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to you went to RCC for a while.
Yeah.
And then what? Or what were you What were you studying?
Just trying to get an AA degree, just mainly. English, history, math, that type of thing.
Working.
Or aircraft. Yeah. And then I sold insurance for a while. I worked at the Riverside Businessmen's Association. That was a collection agency. Worked there. In the meantime, I kept looking for positions, It was going to be a toss-up between a police department and a fire department. And fire department came first. So I went for that one. And I started out at the Colton Fire Department. And at first they weren't going to hire me because they said I was too small, too short. But I proved to them on that day of the interview, I proved to them I could do whatever they asked.
How tall were you? Or are you?
I'm like 5'6.5", but you had to be 5'9". So, but anyways, yeah, I went through all that. And then from Colton, I went to the City of Orange Fire Department, and that's where I stayed for 30 years.
And we're living in the city of Orange?
Oh no, yeah, lived in Riverside,
Oh.
got divorced, met B, and then. Yeah, it's my wife there. We've been married. We've been together for 30 years now.
Come here, young lady.
We've been together for 30 years now, so she's kind of she's a hero too. She deserves to be up there too.
Yeah, well, let's just turn that over to her a little bit. Guys, get closer together. Yeah, you've been married, even though you've been married 30 years, you still sit close to each other. B, tell me, where did you meet this handsome gentleman?
At a restaurant.
Which one?
It was called ESOPs by the University of Riverside. I worked at that time for the state of California, and I met him, and I was 30 years old, never been married before, and I met him, and I says, "Oh, he's a fireman. He's got benefits."
I was 33 when I met him.
And so...
What were you? You were working for the state of California doing what?
At that time, I was with the Department of Fair Employment and Housing. Prior to that, I was with Caltrans. Prior to that, I was with Riverside County Schools. And from the state, I went over to work for the city of Redlands, and I was assistant city clerk for 23 years.
Really?
So we're both retired now.
And what was your maiden name?
Reyes.
Reyes. And tell me a little bit about your mom and dad.
My mom and dad,
And what was your father's name?
Henry Reyes, a World War II veteran. He fought in the Philippines. He was combat engineers. I'm the oldest of 5 children. My mother worked, and when she married my dad, she stopped working and said, "Oh, I don't have to work anymore." But then she had 5 children. That was a lot of work. She says she was much harder than she anticipated.
And what was her name, her maiden name?
Lupe Perez.
And did they all come from Mexico? I mean, their families and stuff?
My
Or-
parents are born here. My dad in Tucson, Arizona. And my mother, they're in Colton, California. My grandparents were from Mexico, but I don't know really any history of my grandparents. I stayed with my grandma every now and then, and she was very religious, and
Yeah.
unfortunately I don't know the history like my husband knows of his family.
Yeah, I'm learning about ours. You know.
Yeah. And the street you grew up on in Riverside, what street did you all live on when you grew up?
Well, I'm from Colton.
I mean, from Colton.
And
From Colton.
my dad, after the war, he became a carpenter. Joined the Carpenters Union. So my dad, the first house he bought was on Valley Boulevard in Colton. Back then it was I Street. And the gas companies were becoming big business, so they approached my father about buying his land because the freeway went in across the street. Our side of the street was left alone, but the I-10 was being built across the street, and so they asked my father for his property. He says, "Do you want the house or just the land?" They said, "Well, we just want the land to build a gas station." It was Richfield Gas. And so he says, "Well, then I can have the house?" They said, "Yes." So he dismantled that house by himself, brick by brick, and built us a new one on Sperry Drive. And the house is still there. That was 1956.
No, I'll be darned. Hold that thought. I got to change tapes here. Okay. Everybody doing all right?
Mm-hmm.
I gotta go for a walk. Why don't you interview B for a walk?
No, I shouldn't even be on this.
Yeah, you should.
We'll take a break here.
I apologize for
Let me
this.
turn this off here for right now.
That's okay, we need a break.
Cyberspace.
You're gonna call the whole neighborhood.
Okay, we got this magazine here, Ronnie. Let's talk about this for a little bit. Which is November 26, 1965, Life magazine, and there's, I'm assuming, a prisoner, it says a Viet Cong prisoner being held by U.S. Marines. And then I see on the inside, there's a talk about it, and there's highlighted there, it says Ronnie Sanchez. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Earlier, I told you about the firefight we got into, where the round was jammed. That's what that story's about, right there.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, that's where Bob was wounded. Bobby Mack was wounded there, and I killed that Viet Cong soldier after Bob was wounded, and I'd been in other firefights, but that was the one that's probably stuck with me a lot because I actually got to see the guy, touch him, carried him back. Like I said earlier, that's the reason we did it, is because we had to verify what we did.
Right.
We were interviewed that morning, and they used our story as part of that story of the corpsman and the doc going through the villages, taking care of the kids,
okay.
taking
So
care of the
that's
children.
that's the
gist of
story.
it.
That's
Yeah.
the gist of that story. Yeah.
Another sidelight on that story is that there's a child in there with burns on her scalp. Her hair's burned off. Yeah, it wasn't from napalm. It was an accident, like a cooking fire accident. It's one of those things that got blown out of proportion. Well, we were there. We were with the doc. We were escorting him around the next day. That's how these fellows, these life photographer and journalists, that's how he found out about us. We didn't broadcast it, and they put that in there to show that, you know, how dangerous it was for the doc to be doing this. And actually, he was like a regimental doctor, corpsman. He wasn't a real.
He was back.
He was
at
back
the
in
aid
a rear
station, huh?
gear, yeah, back at the aid station. But anyway, you know, there's nothing to take away from him, you know. But I'm trying to explain to you what happened, you know, at the time. Yeah, so. Yeah.
I meant to ask you, did you fight alongside any time the South Vietnamese Army?
Right, we did. We helped train him, and you know, we fought alongside of them also. Or they fought alongside us. You know.
And how did they react? How, as fighters?
Some of them were very good, and others were like, I would say that they were not very interested in what they were doing. They wanted to go home. Because they would call them out like for a week or two at a time. It was like kind of like a National Guard type of setup, you know. And then they would leave. They would go back, and we would be out there.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing the majority of the things there, you know. And it didn't sit too good with some of the other Marines, because there were people your age that were not fighting for their country. We were doing it for them. So.
Did you get to know any of the Vietnamese people?
You know, some of them were very nice, right? Get to know them.
Did any of them speak English, or could you converse with them, or what?
Well, they would try to speak English. There was a lot of French that was spoken, and we were fortunate to have a Marine that was from Montreal, a French Canadian. His name was Robert Michaud, and he would converse with them, and he could converse with the Vietnamese soldiers. You know.
Did you have any meals with any of the Vietnamese?
Sure. Yeah, I did. Yeah. Their food was good. You know, it was nourishing. Yeah. We would mix our sea rations in with their food too. You know, just to have something different besides canned.
Would they ask you into their homes? Did you ever have a meal in their homes with them?
Yeah. Yeah, you're asking it what their reaction was to us too. You know, some of them were really compassionate. Like we were suffering one time from being out in the rain, you know, and cold, and this lady and her daughter was an older lady, and I guess it was her granddaughter or daughter. They took us into their house, and they cooked for us. They gave us steamed rice, a vegetable soup, and in return we gave them canned sea rations. You know, they used to like the spiced beef sea ration, so we'd give them that. They would share tea with us. You know, they would give us a drink of tea.
B? What you going over there? Okay. You said something about that he kind of showed him how to scramble eggs or something like that. Maybe over there?
Oh, yes. The story Ron told me that he befriended some people and he showed them how to make egg sandwiches. So he still eats them. I don't know the story around.
We paid this lady. We were at Marble Mountain, this little village there, and that was our headquarters. We operated out of there. And, you know, you get a picture of this. You know, it's raining, you're miserable, you've been up all night, you're hungry. Well, I showed this lady there how to scramble eggs. She never had done it before. And then I showed her get a piece of bread. They had these French rolls like this there in that village. Cut it open, put the scrambled eggs in there. Really simple. And I would pay her to do this, you know. And we had MPC and we had piasters. Whatever money I had in my pocket, I would just give it to her, you know. And she would see me and she would hand me one of these. She'd see me coming down the road and she'd quick go make me a sandwich and hand it to me. I would give her the money. She was a nice lady, you know. Yeah. And she'd give me a cool drink of water, you know, something like that. But yeah. taught her how to do that.
Tell me about your training for the fire department. What does that consist of?
That was pretty strenuous, you know, and everything that you learned in the fire department was based around the concept of teamwork again, you know, so it fit right in with that, you know. And the fire department training was, you know, the main thing you learned was to take care of yourself, you know, and the concept there was a rescuer has to rescue himself first. So in other words, you know, you took care of the people around you again, you know, doing the same thing you did, same job you did as a Marine, taking care of the other firemen and civilians around you, and you took care of yourself, you know.
But at 911, I would think that those firemen that just ran in and ran up pretty much knew they probably weren't going to get out of there. Do you think or not?
I think they were going to stay. They were under the impression that the building was going to hold up.
Were you in any serious fires where it was a touch and go?
Yeah, we were in a lot of fires like that, a lot of instances like that too. But then again, you know, it's like you have to rely on who you are, you rely on your training. You know, you have to have the strength about you, no matter what you do. Even driving down the freeway, you have to be alert. You know.
I know there's.
I was part of a task force 5. It was Urban Search and Rescue. We worked for what's the name of that outfit? FEMA. No, is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, FEMA. And we went to Oklahoma City in 1995. Yeah, but we were the last team there. So our primary job mission was recovery. And by recovery we meant body parts and bodies. So we went through all that again, you know. And that was a pretty dangerous building to be in, you know. It's probably the most dangerous, that and swift water training, those two, that instance there and then swift water training were probably the most dangerous parts I was in. But that McMurray building that was something else, you know. And there was a lot of anger there, you know, not because we were there or we had to be there to do this. Anger was more towards the person that did it, you know. And by the time we got there, they'd already found Timothy McVeigh. You know, they'd already captured him. So
Ron came home very angry from that strike team or
well, that was an incident, really.
incident that he went out to. Especially two come to my mind. When he picked up a file cabinet, and this lady, he says she was just perfectly dressed in her green suit. He still dreams of her, but she was just flattened out by that file cabinet. And then when they worked their way down floor by floor to the nursery that was hit first, and he said he picked up a baby shoe that was still tied, which obviously had been blown off. And when Ron came home from that incident, he had more gray hair than when he left. He said, "Oh my goodness, Ron, look at you."
Yeah,
it just took a lot out of him.
It was quite an experience. We were there for a week, and 5 days actually being on the rubble pile there, being in the building. But we used all of our tools, we used all of our experience, and everything we had, everything at our disposal we did, and we used it, you know, all the experience. And everybody on that team, and you know, are long-time firemen, you know. And that's what you find a lot of dedication. There's a lot of people that are very, very dedicated. And you look closely, you'll see that even delivery men, they've got this thing about them. I'm making this delivery, I'm going to get this there on time, and I'm leaving, I'm going to go to the next one. You know, this is my truck, I'm protecting it. You see that a lot, you know. I think that's important, yeah. It's
the American spirit.
Yeah, the spirit, right, the American spirit, yeah. Yeah, I got to go with that. But you see that a lot, you know. There's a lot of dedication.
Okay, let's go back. So you met at this restaurant.
Oh, no.
And it was love at first sight, I assume.
Yeah, probably.
And so how long did you go together before you got married?
A month.
Yeah, we moved right along. I
Time
was
is
already
up.
separated.
Time is of the essence.
Yeah, you gotta hurry up. I was already separated at the time, you know, and then we got together, then we stayed together for about a year, and then we decided to get married.
Okay.
So, and then we were married, both working, and then in 1985 we adopted some children. We adopted 3 children, 2 boys and their sister. Later on we found that they had a sister, and we adopted her
A
too.
year later, yeah.
So they're all related then?
They all have the same mother.
They had the same mom, different daddies, and
Yeah.
we adopted them.
Where'd you find them, or did you go through an agency or something?
We had to go to this adoption, well, we had to take classes to be eligible to adopt and get a certificate. And then we went to different places, and the boys came from LA County, and our daughter came from Orange County.
They had been in foster care for 5 years and severely neglected in the foster care system. And
What were their ages when you got them?
6.5 and 8.5. And they had never been to a grocery store. They were eating off the floor. The youngest
In
one.
that foster home thing, yeah.
Well, we took them to a restaurant, and then they crawled under the table. They were eating whatever was on the floor by the first people that were there, and the younger one, he at age 6.5, almost 7, he weighed 35 pounds, and had a lot of scarring that later on we got taken care of with plastic surgery. And now they're all grown up, and they all have their own kids and
Their own problems, too.
their own.
Yeah. Try to avoid.
And but like you said, a year after the boys came to live with us, we became aware that there was a sister. Plus, we think there's other kids too, but we only found 3. And
How old was the sister?
she was 6.5 when we met her. But she came out of the Orange County system, which was the opposite of the LA County system.
And what was their heritage, their background?
Hispanics, they're all Hispanics.
And what are
And-
their names?
The girl is Paloma. Her, the 2 brothers are Javier and Jose.
They were named before.
Yes.
And how did they adapt to your household?
They were like so shocked that they could go to a grocery store. I think they were used to living in the garage where they were at. And I did go through the authorities to report the neglect so that they wouldn't have other foster kids, but the younger one just couldn't remember enough details like the older brother did, so there was no collaboration there, so it didn't go anywhere. And then their sister Paloma, she came out of a very good foster care system, and so she still is in contact with her foster mother every now and then, and because that was good memories for her.
And where did the kids go to school?
The boys started out in Colton, and then we moved to Redlands, and that's when she came to live with us. And so they all went through the Redlands system.
Yeah, they all graduated from Redlands High School.
They all graduated early, and then the boys went off to the Navy and the Coast Guard.
And where did you live in Redlands?
On Waters Court. And I worked for the city at the time, so it was pretty convenient for me to just work like 5 miles down the road and watch them. And Redlands is a small town, and I would get reports. So I saw Jose throwing a rock at Javier, and they're walking to have their music lesson. So by the time I got home, I knew about it.
Do you guys have a church that you go to these days?
No, not anymore.
Occasionally I'll go to this non-denominational. It's basically, I think it's kind of like a Baptist church. I kind of go there when I feel the need for it. You know, I do a lot of praying myself.
And do you have any activities, recreational-wise, that you guys like to do? Do you do much traveling, or you play any sports? Or
Since we're retired, we babysit 3 days a week. Now it's 3 days. It used to be 5. Now we're down to 3. And in those days, I also go to the VA hospital, and I volunteer in the Agent Orange Registry and Compensation and Pension Office, which is fine with me. They give me paperwork to do. And we also have a home in Arizona, Bullhead City, Arizona. So when we're not babysitting, we go to Arizona.
When you're babysitting grandchildren, or
Yes.
what?
Yeah, we have a 2-year-old grandson. We help out that way. That's our contribution, you know, in lieu of giving them money for daycare. Bring them over here. You know.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, that works.
Yes, I get paid $10 a day for 3 kids. And then when I do get the money, don't tell my son-in-law this, I put it into the kids' bank accounts. I tell them I needed to reimburse my groceries.
The other 2 are older. They go to school, you know, so they'll come in and have toast, and then it's time to take them to school.
So we take them to school, pick them up.
Palom's been picking them up. Our daughter, she gets out. Sometimes she'll get out of work
Where does
early.
she work?
She works for a dental office.
In Yucaipa.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Do you know the doctor that she works for?
I can't pronounce her name.
No, it's
a lady.
a long
You're
name,
telling me.
yeah. She's a Dellinger.
You said a Navy?
Yes, she's the dentist is retired Navy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you probably were an instructor or something.
I don't know about that.
she had a practice previously in Huntington Beach, and then she came to Yucaipa. And my daughter really likes working for her
That's good.
because she works around school hours.
Now, do you all get down here to Palm Springs very often?
Yes, we bought a timeshare Palm Springs Tennis Club back in '83, so we're here every year.
Do you play tennis? Or
No.
We just like the sound of
Yeah.
tennis club.
Oh, that's a nice place, I bet. Yeah.
So yeah, our kids have been here a lot too. And
Well, I think we might be just about ready to wrap it up. Any of you guys have anything that you'd like to ask? Or?
I would like to ask one other thing of each of you. How did you feel when your sons went to the service? What was your feeling about that? Did you encourage it? Did you feel
Oh
otherwise?
yeah, we did. Yeah, especially the one in the Coast Guard, because he could never make up his mind what he wanted to do. But he was in like Sea Cadets. You ever heard of the Sea Cadet program?
Sure.
Yeah, he was involved with that. So we had to make sure he went to all the Sea Cadet meetings, and then we bought him the book. There's a book now you could study, you know. And I showed him all ropes, knots, and I told him about internal combustion engines, you know.
Beautiful.
You know, we encouraged him to go because he couldn't make up his mind what he wanted to do. The older one, the one that went in the Navy, he was a bright guy, but he goofed off in high school. He got all D's, you know. So there's no way he was, you know, why send him to college?
So they didn't stay in.
No, he was there 6 years in the Navy, 6 or 7 years.
And then
But he became he was in engineering. Yeah, he became he was in engineering, so he did a really good job there, outstanding job there. But yeah, he goofed off in high school, and there's no way you can send him to college. You know.
And you
even
mentioned
his counselor even told me that. He said, "Don't save your money," you know.
you mentioned
That's what he
9/11.
Yes.
On that day, the Navy always has Tiger cruises, and that was the second Tiger cruise that Ron went on because our son-in-law Paloma married a sailor. And so Ron that was his second Tiger Cruise. Jose was working in Florida as a recruiter. Javier was in the Coast Guard. He was back in New Jersey, Maine. Cape May?
Cape May,
And,
New Jersey.
So Ron went to do this Tiger Cruise with our son-in-law. And they had just left Honolulu 3 days before 9/11. And he was really proud because everybody's joyous on the ship. They're finishing up their 6-month tour, and they're coming home to San Diego. 9/11 hit, and these young men, they just went into their work mode. They got real serious. The family and friends on the ship were on their own, and these guys went to work. And I was used to being able to go onto the base in San Diego, just going into the office, filling out the forms. But after that, it changed. Everything changed. The chain link fencing went up around the ships, the mirrors under the cars, and it was just, and Ron did call me. Everyone did rally. His sisters were worried about him. The story going around his family was because he had previously been a Marine, he was reactivated and he was going to stay on the ship and they were going to make a U-turn and go.
We're going to go get him.
And and the kids are all calling me, well, where's Dad? I don't know. And then he did call me, first thing out of my mouth, which was a no-no, well, where are you? Oh, never mind. I know you can't tell me. And so
well, we had to take turns using the phone on the ship. It was a satellite link up, you know.
it was scary times.
They would call your name, and you know it was under control. Everything was under control when all that happened. You know, so it was a destroyer, is what we were on. And my son-in-law he got me a spot on the Tiger Cruise, you know. So I went there.
Like the destroyer.
Oh, it was an old one, you know. It was the old Kincaid. In fact, they took it out of service now. It's not even. It's all scrap now. It's probably
the Kincaid
turned into automobiles or something, you know.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I don't have any questions so much, but more of a comment. It's a real honor to sit here and listen to your story and realize what wonderful Americans we have right here.
Thank you.
You're the epitome, not only in your service to the country, but your service to adopting a family, and I'm proud of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You know, the thing that gets me is, you know, you go through life and you just do things. Sometimes you're a goofball, and sometimes it doesn't work out the way you want it to. But you know, but you end up doing things. When you look back, hey, you did the right thing. You know, and it's hard to describe. You know, thank you. I appreciate your comments there.
Ronnie, I'll ask you like I do most of you guys, if you had advice for a young person going into harm's way like we have, what might it be?
I think the probably most important thing to remember is just from my point of view, being an infantryman, just be conscious of your surroundings at all times. Always be conscious of where you're at. Always have your bearings. Never let your guard down. Especially when you go to Afghanistan, Iraq. You know, just always be conscious of where you're at. And rely on your training. The people that trained you, they have the experience. That's why they're there. They're there to assure that you learn, and you learn properly, and that you use the tools that are given to you. The tools they have now are great. What we had was primitive. We had World War II, Korean gear. Hey, you know, most advanced thing we had back then was the M60 machine gun. Now they've got night vision, they've got infrared, they've got communications that, you know, that are, you know, like science fiction to us. You know. Back then, when you compare it with stuff that we would dream up, we would say, why don't we have this, why don't we have that? use your tools and be conscious of your surroundings.
Ronnie, I want to thank you for your service to our country. Thanks for coming in and joining us today. Bea, thank you for coming also.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ron. Yeah,
It's nice meeting you, Doc.
You did an excellent job.
Thanks.
Excellent job.
Not much on the cutting room floor.
I think